Death of a Nation, Chapter 4. Zola. Zola sunk her toes into the sand as she padded along the shore. The cool waves of the Indian Ocean washed over her feet, removing the sand before it had a chance to cake up. She remembered this place. Zola looked up, and in the distance she could see the tall buildings like swords striking into the air. She had been here before, but it was years ago. Her Tata mama took Zora and her here. That was the one and only vacation they had ever experienced. She and Zora played in the sand and water all day. Zola could remember never wanting the sun to go down. But before she knew it, the moon had crept up into the sky and the ocean had turned into a sheet of darkness that seemed to stretch out into the rim of the earth. Little Zola's cheeks were wet with tears when she felt her Tata's huge hand on her shoulder. She knew then that it was time to go. Zola touched her shoulder. The sensation of her Tata's touch dwindled into nothingness, as if its presence in this world ceased to exist. Strange. Zola forced the ominous feeling that made her stomach its home out and continued down the shoreline. The crunch of Zola's bare feet plunging into the sand was accompanied by another set of footsteps, louder and more frequent. Zola spun around to find no one there. Zola sped up, barely letting the sand hit the bottom of her feet. What was once a reprieve from the devoid state of oblivion was now becoming a never-ending nightmare. The longer she walked, the further away the end of the coast seemed to move. The footsteps returned. They pounded against the wet sand, pushing Zola deeper and deeper into anxiety. Just like he had been all those years ago, the sun disappeared. The only source of light was a slither of the moon that hadn't yet been concealed behind the army of clouds in the sky. Zola's skinny legs whimpered as the energy drained from her body. She stopped, breathing heavily while sweat rolled down. The footsteps halted. She could feel an intense heat emanating only a few inches beyond her. Her mind screamed for her to run, but her body was exhausted. Fear crept up the back of her chest like a slug. Zola slowly peeked over her shoulder. A figure towered her over in a copper-red body armor with a matching sword hanging from its side. The shadow casted by the clouds hid the person's face. "Who are you?" Zola asked. The figure remained still, its sword clutched firmly in its hand. "Did you bring me here? Where is my family?" Zola's voice quivered. She received no answer. The sword flashed into the air, and before Zola could react, it came down towards her. Sand, dry and grainy, and wet and clumpy alike, spat out in every direction as the heavy weapon slammed into the earth. Zola scurried away from the warrior. "What did I do to you?" Zola squeaked as she backpedaled towards the ocean. The figure stomped forward. The sword illuminated a copper-red glow from its hilt. Zola slipped on loose sand in the shallow water, landing on her back. The figure's eyes glowed red. The glow lit up her face, revealing the dark undertones and short planes of it. Zola's breath caught in the back of her throat as the realization of who this person was came to her. The woman lifted her sword. Zola stared, eyes wide in fear as she looked upon her own face. "Don't!" Zola shrieked before the warrior plunged the sword down. "Zola!" Zora's voice broke through the dizzy mirage. Zola attempted to pick her head up, but a groggy sensation rushed through her skull. "Zora?" Zola muttered through dry lips. Suddenly her sister's face, covered in tiny wounds that glimmered in the sunlight, and bloodshot eyes popped up into her eyesight. "Zola! I thought you were dead!" Zola grinned, but she barely had enough energy to keep that up. So many questions ran through her mind, but none seemed to come out. Her eyelids struggled to stay open. The last thing she wanted to do was sleep, but she couldn't help herself. Her body felt so weak. "Zola, try to keep your eyes open, please," Zora begged. Zola frowned. She sounded almost afraid. Zora? Scared of anything? What had happened since she was asleep? Zola blinked, looking up at the wooden blocks that held the ceiling together. Where were they? The touch of Zora's hand caressing her face was the last thing she felt before her eyes closed. A brisk chill sent shivers down her bones. The sounds of birds squawking in the distance, waves crashing against the shore. Zola's chest tightened. She did not want to be there again. She needed to wake up. A hot liquid burnt the edge of her lips. Zola grunted. She opened her eyes to her sister, pressing a spoon of hot soup into her mouth. Sorry, sissy. I hope this will keep you awake. Zora's voice sounded much softer and more even than she remembered. How long had she been out? Her sister's eyes had even cleared since she last saw her. Zola swallowed the soup. Its savory flavor tingled her tongue as it swished down her throat. Thank you. She could hardly hear her own voice. She finished up the soup and felt much more lively because of it. She began to examine her body and discovered how frail she had gotten. She could see bones that she had no idea were even there. It was going to take some time to recover from this. But if she had survived this long, she had faith she was going to make it through this too. How long was I out? Zola asked as Zora came back to her side after putting up the bowl. Zora bit down. Zola wasn't sure if her sister was thinking or hesitating to answer in fear of upsetting her. Zola reached for her sister's hand. You can tell me. I'm okay. Zora rubbed the back of Zola's hand. Months, she responded solemnly. Zola tried to mask her reaction but failed. Tears spilled down her face as her throat dried. She could taste that soup clawing back up for a second coming. It's okay, Zola. We've taken care of things. I knew you were going to come out of this, so I made sure that things were good when you did. Zora smiled, but Zola wasn't fooled. She knew it was fake. Sadness pulled at the tips of her eyes like hooks on a fish. There was no way to soften the blow of what had occurred. Changing the subject, Zola asked, So where are we now? A new district, far away from home. Zora's eyes dropped to the floor. In Tata and Mama? Zola asked. Zora's face stiffened. She glanced back at something Zola couldn't see. What is it? Zola asked. Something was up, but she couldn't tell what. Zola's mind began to wonder. After months of being unconscious, anything could have happened. Their parents could have been hurt. Zora could have ran away and taken Zola with her. They could have been kidnapped by some desperate criminals. That would explain the horrible condition of the house they resided in. Just by the ceiling, Zola could tell it was a shack. Tell me, Zora, Zola demanded more loudly than she thought her throat could handle. Zora opened her mouth, but her words didn't come out. You're awake, Mama called out from behind Zora. Zora jumped up in front of their mama. Get back. Zora, why are you talking to Mama like that? Zola said. The last outburst had already begun to take a toll on her. Zora spat. Because she's crazy. She stood firmly in front of the wagon. Strangely, Mama didn't push Zora out of the way. Please let Mama pass, Zola breathed. Stand aside, child. Mama pursed her lips. They exchanged a glance that made Zola's skin crawl before Zora stepped out of the way. Mama bent down, giving Zola a clear view of her face. She had aged heavily in the last couple of months. Worry lines formed in the middle of her forehead. She could tell that she too had been crying not too long ago. Her once kinky, chestnut-colored hair that made Zola envious she did not inherit it had been soiled and uncombed. As Zola looked deeper into her mama's eyes, she saw the wildness in them. How are you feeling? Mama asked with a smile that took years off her appearance. Zora stood so close to their mama's back that Zola could have sworn Mama could feel Zora's breath on her neck. Much better. Weak, but I think I'll live. Zola avoided direct eye contact with her. That's great. I'll fix you some food. Mama began to stand up. Zora already gave me some soup, thank you. Mama's face twitched slightly. Okay. Where's Tata? Zola asked. He'll be home soon, Mama said, giving Zora a nasty scowl. I'm going to the market. Do you need anything, Zola? No, ma'am. Thank you. Mama brushed past Zora, and a few moments later, Zola could hear a door close. Zora disappeared out of Zola's sight. Wait, where are you going? Zora popped back up, already clothed with another shirt that seemed too big for her small frame. Out. Zola grunted. Out where? You're going to leave me just like that? Zora nodded. Yes, it is important. You have to trust me on this. Does it have anything to do with you and Mama? Zora narrowed her eyes. You're half alive and still observant. Zola, were you faking it this whole time? She cut a smile. I wish I was. Trust me, if it was a prank, I would have jumped out of this uncomfortable wagon months ago. Zola chuckled, but the seriousness of her condition sobered her quickly. Where are you going? To follow Mama. She's up to something. I know it, Zora explained. Zola could tell when her sister was lying. This was not one of those times. Okay. Okay, Zora repeated and disappeared again. Take me with you, Zola called out. Absolutely not, Zora shook her head. Zora wasn't budging, but no matter what it took, Zola was convinced she would get out of this shack. She hadn't seen the world in months outside of the strange dreams that appeared behind her eyelids, and she was not about to miss this opportunity. If it's that important, I need to be there too. I could watch your back. It might be too dangerous. I don't want you to get hurt. Zora backed away. I'm more likely to get hurt here by myself than with you. Anything could happen. Zora's face tightened. Zola smiled because she knew she had convinced her. Okay, Zora conceded. She began to wheel Zola out of the door. Zola's victory was short-lived as a thought protruded inside her mind. Her sister was not one to show emotions like sadness. Anger, yes. Violence, yes. But sadness, especially to the brink of crying after hearing a couple of meaningless words, that was not Zora. What had happened while she was asleep? The uneven dirt road caused the wagon to shake and bump up against Zola's back. Zola resisted the urge to complain because she knew her sister would turn them around. She had gotten this far, and she was not about to go back because of a little roughness. So, she bit down on her lip and rode out the pain. Zola took notice of every building and new landmark that she discovered on the road to take her mind off the aching. She didn't recognize anything. It seemed like everyone who had lived in this area had little shack homes like theirs. The land was mostly bare, save the spots of grass and farmland that some company called Dixon Boer owned. The overwhelming aroma of fragrances Zola hadn't smelt in what felt like years clouded her thoughts. Intoxicating perfumes, meats and fruits boiled and fried, potent flowers and powerful spices whipped up into one platter resting on the edge of her nose. We're close, aren't we? Zola asked, inhaling the scents. Yes, we are. Zora's voice wasn't light at all. It was hard and rough. Zola halfway wanted to ask Zora to stop so they could indulge in some of the goods, but now wasn't the time. They had a mission to complete. Plus, she knew Zora wouldn't go for it. Zola waved the tempting vendors by as they exited her sight. The wagon stopped abruptly, nearly jerking Zola out of it. Zora, what the? Zola squealed. Shh! Zora cut her off, then pointed ahead. There's Mama. Zola could see their Mama standing in front of an unusual vendor booth. It was dark and eerie, almost unnoticeable if you were walking fast. But if someone was unfortunate enough to stop and browse its selection, it was guaranteed to impute an unsettling feeling that reached down to the pit of your belly, as it did Zola. There were straw dolls with no faces and sewn-in X's for eyes hanging down each side of the booth. Bones Zola couldn't distinguish between animal or human littered the counter. Zola didn't understand why someone would have such a setup in a busy marketplace. No one would come by. What is Mama doing? Zola whispered. Waiting, Zora responded without taking her eyes off the booth. Ah, two young ladies. Would you like to try on some beautiful diamond earrings? Guaranteed to make your friends envious. A slender man with thick eyebrows and a scruffy beard called out. Zola hadn't even noticed him walking up. Not interested. Zora waved him off. The man frowned. Not interested? And a poor man's wares? I promise you these are the best in the world. He bit down on one of the stones. Authentic and fresh out of the mines. Not interested, Zora barked at the man. The man lifted his palms. Okay. I understand now. Not interested. Probably couldn't afford it anyway. She's gone, Zora yelled. Before Zola could look up, the wagon was moving towards the strange booth. Zora searched behind the booth. Zora, you shouldn't be. Zola started but decided against telling her sister what to do. She had been there while Zola was asleep and was obviously more aware of what was going on than Zola was. Zora kicked the booth. I can't find her or the lady she was meeting with. Can you just tell me what's going on? Maybe I can help, Zola suggested. Zora looked up at her. Mama is going crazy, like I said before. And I believe this woman who owns this booth is the reason for it. She claims to know the future. Does she? Zola asked, instantly regretting she allowed it to spill from her mouth. It doesn't matter, as long as Mama believes it. So we have to stop this before it gets more out of hand, Zora said firmly. What could she possibly do? Mama is one of the nicest people I have ever known. Zola couldn't fathom their mama being this insane character Zora was painting her out to be. Zora clenched her fists and stared down at her feet, something Zola hadn't seen her do since she was little. Mama tried to kill you,